Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond Cost. Today, we're going to talk about cost engineering, the history, the current status, and where it is going. For that, we have brought a very special guest today, Severin Heimrath from the company AWS Innovation Partners. They're a cost engineering service provider in the manufacturing industry, supporting leading companies in the manufacturing industry on the market globally. And yeah, Severin, really nice to have you. Thank you for making the time. Maybe for the audience, you want to make a quick intro about yourself.
Absolutely. So I work since more than 15 years now in cost and value engineering. Started with a study of industrial engineering in Munich. It was like I just thought the interaction between financial and techniques is something what's interesting, what's definitely something for the future. And then after a few semesters, I get in contact with one of our professors, Professor Bernd Schulz. He was one of the employees of AWS in that time. And he asked me if I want to join as working student jobs there. And then I started with doing research in cost and value engineering, machine research, material research, and things like that. Afterwards, I did some other things in the area of the automotive industry, a bit in the aerospace, like training academies and in the quality area. But finally, I really recognized that cost and value engineering is for an industrial engineer really what he learned in the university, and you hear quite often in the university, it's just you learn to learn and how to work. But I saw really what I learned is really possible to apply in cost engineering. And then I started in January 2010 at AWS as an analyst, project engineer. Nowadays we say cost engineer. And did a few years of really basic work as a cost engineer and started to go into the project management. And now, since roughly 10 years, I'm one of the MDs of AWS and co-leading with another team, with my team, with our team, AWS. And it's still quite interesting because you every day see new things. And that's the reason why I'm still in cost and value engineering.
I mean, Zed is in the field of cost engineering, and your company's name popped up quite some time when we talked to clients. Maybe let's take a step back. You said the word cost engineering is very overloaded. It's called sometimes cost estimation, cost analysts. One of my colleagues says in some ways you cannot not do cost engineering. You're just maybe not aware of it. But how would you define it? Or when you talk, especially with prospects that maybe do not have this function explicitly defined, how would you explain that?
It's absolutely right that there are different levels of doing cost engineering, costing. Like sometimes cost estimation is the right thing, sometimes really deep dive cost engineering is the right thing. And we always connect it to cost and value engineering. Because cost engineering is really just to work on the cost structure. Value engineering integrates to take in the complete technique of the part, what's the geometry of the part, and that kind of things. And that's the important point where I think if you're talking about cost engineering, it's always cross-functional, it always integrates different functions within a company. And then it's about getting the clarity of the product and the costs connected to the product. Then you can start to work with it.
And now throughout your journey, you had the academic background from a technical perspective, but were you surprised about the approach when you first started or throughout the years? Did it change? How was your journey from basically being an analyst to the CEO of leading this?
Honestly, if we started in 2010, it was like we had a list of 10, probably 15 different materials. You said it's a steel sheet, it's a steel rod, it's a plastic material. Probably you differentiate it in between ABS and PP and then some special materials, but not in the level of detail where we are today. Today we have, so in the AWS database, we have roughly 800 different machines, and it could be even more, but we on some point in time decided, hey, it's not the pure amount of machines you have in your database, it's about the quality behind. And the same, it's on the materials. You now have probably 1 million or more different points of materials, and that's the difference where we are today. So in 2010, it was really like more on a level of cost estimation, and then it started to interact with the different disciplines within the company, but as well with the partner companies, the suppliers. And it was like for them, for the suppliers in the first step, it was like an eye-opener. Hey, they come back and ask for why it should be that price. And then they started to get into the game as well, and then it really started to go into the details.
Yeah, I see. Throughout the years, it said one word that, in my opinion, encompasses maybe better, because engineering is maybe a wide word, is in a sense cost modeling, because you guys really focus on building a model and going from there so that there is like explainability. A lot of people, when they think about cost engineering, is like a guy who types in stuff in Excel and then gets a price, right? As you said, you basically over time got more sophisticated in terms of the level of depth that you go. Do you have an example of the depth that you go sometimes to really understand the core drivers?
If we're looking to a part which is milled or something like that, then it's really like we're looking in the first step into which is the right machine. Afterwards, we're really looking into what are the different points which you have to work on. For every single point, you look into what's the cycle time for it, what's the right tool for it. And then you create a quite detailed breakdown of the different work steps. And afterwards, you have the clarity what's the problem or what's the cost driver within that specific process. And a few years ago, you probably had said, hey, it's a metal part which is 1.5 kilogram, and then you said, okay, it's in kilo ox price or something like that, and then it's it. But that's definitely a way to go with. But if you want to assess the details, then you need to know the details, and then it's necessary to dive into it.
And how change your perspective? Because a lot of times we're talking to companies, they're really struggling with hiring cost engineers because you understand the technology itself. A sheet metal expert once told me, this is more art than science. We do things that are by theory not possible. So really understanding kind of the pragmatic, like the practical aspect of it, what is really possible to do from a technical manufacturing, but from part functionality point of view. At the same time, understanding overhead structure and calculation methods and things like that. So you went through that journey. Now you're the CEO. How do you look at your team now? How do you get them educated on this?
What we have at AWS, it's a kind of an integrated knowledge management system. So we have for the different technologies and responsible who is always going to be quite in touch with the industry to know what's going on there. He is responsible for having the right machines, the updated machines in the portfolio. He is the one who is really educating then the rest of the team. So generally at AWS, we are kind of a service provider, consulting company, where you cannot send for one specific part 20 people because you need the plastic experts, the sheet metal experts, the milling expert. Then you have all the tooling around, and you have probably development cost as well. We build kind of generalists, but we always have the network in the background from AWS experts you can reach out to, you can discuss the details, and that really helps.
How, from your perspective, did the view on cost engineering change? We just talked a lot about method and basically skill sets, but from a client perspective, when you talk to clients comparing now and 10 years ago, did it change? Is it still all same? Has it become more important, less important, different requirements?
So I think first we have to look into which industry we are looking. If you look into the automotive industry, if you go to an OEM or tier 1 as well to tier 2 suppliers, everybody knows what's cost engineering. It's not like everybody has integrated it 100% in the perfect way, but everybody knows it. If we're looking to the other industries, like more to consumer goods or more into industrial goods, there are some companies who have integrated cost engineering in their overall system, and there are some which are quite immature in that area as well. You need to find the right people for that position. It's not like people who want to stand still and are happy with the current situation. It's kind of a challenger, because you always need to relook on the product which you have designed. And that's something what's super important. And on the other side, it's really the interest in the technique on the one side, and on the other side, it's a commercial interest. And if you then have somebody who has that interest in both directions, then he's the right one to getting a cost engineer.
Yeah, I mean, talking to a lot of clients, sometimes it's really difficult where to put that function. As you said, it's really cross-department. So we see a lot of companies doing it in a purchasing department, some doing it in a finance controlling department to have like some level of independence, so to say. Some putting it in engineering, saying this is where basically we're going to focus on cost avoidance, right? So design it the right way. Do you have like kind of a rule of thumb? If I want to start with this, how should I do this? Where should I start?
I think you need to look into the overall business of your company. If you have 80% purchased parts, then it's definitely right to go into purchasing. If it's more like you producing things internally, you do a lot of engineering internally, then engineering is probably the right point to set it. What definitely is not the right thing is to have it in both, because it's needed to be one function, and that's, even if it's in purchasing or in R&D, it's important that people talk to each other and really you get a connect, and you get the reputation that if you talk to a cost engineer, that he has the understanding of the manufacturing technology, that he has the understanding of the overall part, but as well the purchasing situation. Then it's most powerful if somebody like this is coming in and supports the project.
And then even their department independent, we've seen some companies do it very centralized. So there's like center of excellence for costing, and then everybody can come and put their request. Other companies, they put them basically into the teams, right? Like in the program management team, there's a cost engineer. How do you look at that? Would you rather embed them in cross-functional teams working together, which is like that kind of this holy grail, but then you run into the problem that everybody does something different, right? A lot of people would now say, okay, a matrix organization is the correct way, right? But how would you start?
Yeah, I think it's really like looking into the organization and then start with where to put it in the right way. And I think depending on the size of the company and the disruption of the company, it could be embedded or it could be central. But if it is embedded, then there is definitely a need to get centralized data and a centralized steering, because otherwise you reach out from two ways to the supplier. The one is saying, hey, that's the right number, and from the other side somebody comes who has a different number, and then you're starting to, hey, the supplier is sitting in the middle and say, hey, what should I do now? That's not a good thing. And that's for us as a service provider as well, always a topic, that if we come in, do our cost engineering, then it's like we're bringing our own database, companies have their own database, and then we have to early align on what data should we use in the end. We can come in and you can see us as additional support and say, hey, let's see if we have major differences in specific cost areas, and let's discuss it. We have, over the last 15 years, really deep drills into specific topics like MGK, or if it's in specific material areas or technology areas. And then let's see what's the right solution for you as a company. And then sometimes it's like, hey, we have to adjust that specifically, but it's important that we work with one value in the future.
Yeah. And you're working together with lots of companies in this field. Is there, looking at the current status, like 1-2 problems that most companies share, and like these are the blockers
Yeah, I think that there are two things. So one is to integrate the cost and value engineering process really into the DNA of a company. So really they have a clear process. Everybody is aware of the process. There is no excuse to not do it, because if you start with excuses, then there's always a reason why not to do it, because time is constrained. And the second thing is, if you want to change something, you should do it early in the process. I think everybody knows it. If you are in the R&D phase of a product, then you have all freedom. You can think about functions, you can think about different materials, but still 80 to 90% of the work we are doing is like product is already designed, we are already producing it, and then you have all the limits around. You have to reinvest into tooling if you change something. You have already a product on the market. If you change things on a product, then if it's already on the market, then the final user will recognize, hey, something changed. If you do it early, then nobody will see that there is a change in the product.
Yeah. And one thing that we saw in terms of challenge, really, especially if you want to set this up, is determining the ROI. Because when you go there, and we sell software for it, you guys sell services for it, or they decide to hire someone. First, it's just overhead, right? Because it's a system of people and tools that generate data and basically actionable measures out of that data. But that data those measures have to be implemented and realized, so to say, so that there is the cashback. And that is most of the time out of the hand of the cost engineering, right? Because this is where the cross department comes. And in our conversations, there is a lot of people in mid-management who understand this, and they're very deep there, but they're trying to find like the correct angle of this. And you said most of the time it's like actually an existing product already being manufactured, and it's like, okay, the EBIT has to get better. Please do something about that, right? On the other hand, most experts align that you should do this 3 years before SOP to have the maximum effect. So how is the conversations, especially when you as a service provider come in and say, this is the ROI, you should do this, makes sense. How do you approach this? What is the angle? How do you grab this problem? So
I think on the first step, it's really like, what's the saving potential for a specific part? And by when can it be realized? So if we're looking pure commercially on it, then it's like doing a should cost. And then you have a difference in between the current part price and the should cost price. You can estimate it upfront if you know the organization better, if you probably know already the part you're talking about, then you can already give an indication on in which range will it be in the end. Then you can say that's what we're shooting to. But in the end, it's then as well, if you do a renegotiation without us, without cost engineering, what's the value then and what's the value with cost engineering, so it's not completely clear. That's one thing on the side, that it's always a question of the basis. Where do we start and what's the price in the end?
And maybe a follow-up question on that, especially when it's about purchase parts. The procurement purchasing department a lot of times get very defensive, because you basically come in and say, this could be 40% less expensive on a part that was already negotiated by a purchaser. So how do you, and at the end of the day, you need to team up with the purchaser, right?
Absolutely. And
so you come in, challenge him extremely. I heard in some meetings where the purchasers told the cost engineer, so do you think I'm an idiot? How is this then possible? So how do you approach that?
If you reach out to these people, it's a different angle. It's a different and a new situation. You have additional information about it. And let's now use this additional lever which you get in hand to come to the best price possible. And if it's 40%, then let's see what's the reason for it. And it's not like a should costing is the ultimate weapon. You cannot come always in and say, hey, I make a should costing, it's 40% less, and we will realize it in the end. To come to a should cost is always a journey, and there is a lot to do around should costing, You have to find the right suppliers for that part. You need different suppliers. You need to challenge them. If you have never changed a supplier, then there is no reason for the supplier. If you have a monopoly of one supplier, then there's no reason for him to reduce the price. You can come in with a should costing. Every single process, every single material block could be in the right way, and you can show it to him. And he sees it and he knows that that's absolutely a well done calculation, but there is no reason for him. You can make it obvious, hey, there is a profit of 40%. Nobody wants to show a profit of 40%, and probably that helps. But in the end, it's really about steering the complete system. And then if he knows there is 40% profit in the end, then it's like, hey, what are the additional measures we have to go? It's to think about how to get a second supplier and that kind of things.
Yeah, and it's a lot of times you said that example with the single source part is actually great. The reason a lot of times that a part is single source is because of the design of the part. It is designed in a very specific way that only that supplier can do it.
Or the supplier has designed it in that way.
Exactly. But let's assume now it was designed by the buying company. And then that leads that from a purchasing case, you have to now go talk to engineering. So the design changes in order to have more sourcing options. But in that case, sometimes it's called hard to talk to engineering because they're saying, I'm making the best possible product. You're one more limitation from many that I already have for designing my product. So how do you get engineering on board when you talk to them?
The complete cost and value engineering is about get the best price and the best product for the company we do it for it. And that we explain as well to the R&D department. Again, for you, it's like, here is a new lever, here's a new cost structure for you. You can see what is the impact on the specific part, what's the impact of a specific tolerance. Is there a specific way to probably reduce that tolerance to have a simpler production process? Or is it probably finally like we have the tolerance, but if we receive the final product and we will measure it, we will not even have set, we will not be in line with the drawings. And that is something what happens quite often. You have a set of drawings, then you go out, you have one supplier who has already supplied kind of that part over years, and he knows that's not that important. But for all the other ones in the market, it's like, it's impossible. We cannot do it with our machines. Probably there is a machine out there to produce it, but we cannot do it. Or it's the way, hey, we can do it, but probably we have a lot of risk here. And then the risk is incorporated to the overall price, the final offer, and then the offer is not as good as it should be. We had the situation a few years ago in the appliance industry. We made a housing, and then we discussed a lot about, hey, it was a metal housing, it was powder coated in the end, and we discussed a lot about powder coating, challenging from the purchasing department, challenge as well from R&D department. Then there was a local team who managed the suppliers and said, hey, in China I have currently some topics about powder coating, and there are new regulations. That's probably a reason that it's so expensive. And then after 3 weeks of discussions, we had a workshop with the supplier. And then we got into the discussion and we discussed the part and we discussed powder coating. And finally came out that there was one edge in the part which was bent down, and it was within radius of 1 millimeter. Yeah. And that's quite hard to, on the one side, create it by stamping, and afterwards you have to roll it in the right way. And that was the reason why the supplier said, hey, it's super risky and probably we have some rework, probably we have a high scrap rate, and that was the reason for the high price. And if you start the discussion early, understand the supplier, hey, we have here a problem that could be risky in the production process, let's think about it. Then you can either solve it and say, hey, it's not that important for design, let's make another radius. Or it's like, hey, we know it, let's test it, let's see how we can solve it. If the edge is important for our design, let's test it, let's see is there a scrap rate or not. If we have a super high scrap rate, then we can start to rediscuss if it's really worth, 50 cents in the product, or can we go back to design now with a clear number, because it's always about fact-based discussions. We have 50 cents for this radius because we have a quite high scrap rate. Is it not like, can we not go to 2 millimeters or 3 millimeters or something like that? And then the discussion is a different one. And
I see. So what you're saying is cost engineering doesn't have to be this confrontative force, but it can be basically most of the time this basis for discussion.
Absolutely.
Basically, like this language, how the supplier, the purchaser, and the engineer can talk to each other and understand and quantify the decision.
Kind of a catalyzer. Yeah? You start the discussion, and probably sometimes people are reluctant. It could not be right. We designed the best product and we purchased it in the best way. Yeah, but without the level of cost engineering.
Absolutely.
And then you bring it in, then you can redo it, and then you will get better results.
Yeah. Now, a very easy question. So, in general, based on your experience, I know it differs from industry, but maybe you can give us a range. If I invest €1 into cost engineering, how much do I get back?
Between 10 and 100.
Really?
It's normal factors, which we see, depending on...
You heard it here.
Well, depending on what's the lot size, what's the annual volume of the product, and so on. There are different areas, depending on the work, what was done before, but that's the average where we are.
And how's your impression? Automotive, in most cases, very mature because they really go into the details on the cost breakdowns. But in other industries, you think there's still a lot of potential?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So what do you think is the best way to communicate this value? Because we have some clients, they started cost engineering with us, and that was a journey and a mental shift. Now they cannot think about not having it.
Yeah.
But how do you create that aha moment?
We touched it already in our discussion before. It's like you get the clarity and you get the basis for really good decisions. Because first, it's kind of soft. It's super important for us to have especially this design, or we need that specific material. And afterwards, what's the impact on the final product. And then everybody knows, okay, that's the impact. And then based on that clear facts, you can do the decision.
And AI in cost engineering is being discussed heavily. Now we have these AI tools that can cognitively do everything. How much do you see is now based in reality, what we could do with AI, and how much is more like marketing and not really applicable?
There are different areas, I think, if we're looking to the support of AI. I think there are this kind of standard processes who everyone in an office does, like formulating emails in the proper way, having all these summaries of meetings, having probably big documents who are summarized to 2-3 pages, and that kind of things that definitely will help cost and value engineering in the same way. Where we see that it's already heavily integrated, it's if we're looking to the complete research topic, because previous to ChatGPT and co, it was like somebody was Googling 4 hours, and now you type in the question, have the right prompt, additional questions, and then you get a quite good overview on a few pages about a specific question. And that's something what definitely helps. What still is the point here is you have to double check the things. It's not like you can take every answer and then go for it. Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely one of the points. And on the other side, if we're going deeper into the details, then I think it is super beneficial because AI can super good handle big amount of data. And so we as AWS, we do cost engineering since 20 years. We have a good understanding of different cost structures for different products. And then based on the input, then you definitely can use AI to create probably not super detailed costings, but definitely cost estimates. In specific situations, that's what you need. And finally, we come back to the point as well, if you have a cost estimate, you need to understand what's behind, because you have to communicate it internally, you have to communicate it externally to the supplier, and you have to negotiate it. Mm-hmm. If you're looking to A parts, I think that will finally not be completely done by AI. Mm-hmm. If you're looking to the tail, C parts, then I could assume that there is really methods like going through thousands of different parts, looking what's the SS price, what's the estimate. We call our calculation tool ACT AI, what's the price for it, and then directly making letters going out to the suppliers, hey, there is a disconnect, we need a cost down here.
So you're saying in terms of AI, it will help us to scale horizontally as cost engineering departments.
Definitely.
To have more coverage, but not now on the most complex things. Actually, freeing up time for the cost engineers that they have even more time on the more complex problems to go very deep.
Yeah, and on that areas, it's definitely supported by AI, as well in the communication process, as well in the negotiation process. If we go into the details, then I could imagine that it's definitely supported, but then you need to get the understanding in the background to finally communicate it.
I see. So from your point of view, it would more change the role of the cost engineer, not completely replace it?
Absolutely. Just 12 years ago, one of our clients said to me, hey, Severin, we are running into a new industrial revolution. We will have everything connected. We, as an OEM, we will know what's the specific scrap rate of a machine, and we will know when the machine works, and so on. And now 12 years later, it's not the case. And there is a good point for the case, because nobody is happy with having just 3, 4, 5% of profit rate. So it's still, we are doing a business. And therefore, you will not open everything to your client in the end. And that's the same on cost engineering, I think. You will have quite detailed cost structures, and it will still stay in specific companies, and they can use it for them. You have your costing as basis, you have additional offers as basis, you do negotiate it, you adjust your cost engineering, you're adjusting the current pricing, but the truth is only on the other side, and it will still stay the same. And that's the thing where you always have to work on. But definitely, even if it stays in silos, it will support cost engineering a lot. And as you said, it will probably change a bit the role, but there will be still cost engineers, even if we're looking to the complete value engineering thing. Yeah? There is a massive support based on AI, like you have a specific part, you can give in the specification, what's the need for the part, and then you get a kind of 10, 15 points off. That could be ideas to reduce the price. But finally, you have to take this 10, 15 ideas, double check it, look into the details, and then probably 5 will fall out, but there will still stay 5 which you can go for.
So if I understand correctly, the realization part will never really go away. Maybe the analysis part will be faster. Now,
definitely.
Aligning on, okay, the role is going to be changed. How so? So what are skill sets of cost engineers going forward? What should they get better or learn?
I think definitely it's communicational skills. These are super important. Kind of networking skills within the company, because if you go into a negotiation, then if you have cost engineering on the table, it should really be a respected person, and everybody has to play his role in the negotiation, and that's important that it's aligned up front, and then the success will be the biggest. So that's definitely one of the points.
And in the area of using AI correctly, is how do you do, like, for example, workshops internally, how to prompt it correctly, or how do you approach that? Yeah, because some cost engineers, they're in the business for a very long time. They're absolute experts in their technology, but maybe not the most tech savvy.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely underutilized not only in cost engineering overall, and therefore it's necessary to train people how to use it in the right way. What are probably the risks? We have specific agents for specific tasks to use to make it as easy as possible and then to integrate it finally into the result.
And if you look organizationally, the next 10 years, do you think cost engineering will be just more of the same and more industries or departments will pick it up? And basically it will come into a scaling renaissance stage where it will just have more usage? Or do you think it will intrinsically change how it is being operated?
I think it's both. It's generally, I think it will roll out to other industries, but in the same time it will evolve. So like we discussed, the basis for the AI-based costing will get better and better. Specifically, if you already have big databases of the cost engineering and the should costings for specific parts which you can reuse, and then have an accelerated assessment process, and then you can go out and look to have the best possible realization of the opportunities you have, either if it's from the negotiation side or if it's more from the re-engineering side.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, if I'm now a VP or manager at a manufacturing company, I don't have a cost engineering function or I have a small one, I want to get out the full potential. What is the one thing I can do tomorrow to move?
Start early.
Early in the product development process.
Early in the process. Either if you go for a negotiation, not call me one day before the negotiation, call me 2 weeks before, then we can do a proper analysis, can think about what is the right way to approach it, have the different opportunities to look into the supplier market, or even better, if we do not come into the situations that we have to renegotiate, then it's really like start in the beginning of the engineering of a product. Then we can think about how to have different functions within a product, what's cost efficient, what's probably really a unique selling point, and the kind of things. And let's do it by just feeling that's important for us. Let's really do it fact-based.
You heard it? You can call up Severin. I think you can help with starting early, right? And this is it for this episode of Beyond Cost. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and so on.